Hey, droogies, boozers, strumpets and losers, as DJ Crusher from the Britain's finest heavy metal television programmes of the 80s used to say. Today I am going to be talking about Metallica's second album. It is called Ride the Lightning and it was released on the 27th of July 1984. It's been about a week since I've done one of these. I'm sure you've all missed me, and if you haven't, that's okay too. Life has been busy. In the run-up to today, I have been working pretty hard. I've also been indulging my friends. I actually went to a physical pub and met actual real friends that I could touch in person in meet space and had actual real in-person face-to-face conversations with them. And I think it's fair to say I've actually missed them. Sometimes during lockdown and COVID over the past 18 months to 2 years, it's felt like all my friends live in my computer and I'm never ever going to ever meet them ever again. And I'm glad to have been proven a little bit wrong. Although obviously the news of the current Omicron infection rates mean that we may very well go back into a lockdown after Christmas because Boris doesn't want to be seen as the man who killed Christmas. Although he's quite happy, by the sounds of it, to kill about 140,000 people with some of his bad decisions. Now, not that I want to talk about too much about politics because frankly, although I have strong political opinions, it also can be quite boring. It's not really relevant to the subject matter at hand, which is Metallica's second album, which I'm talking about here. I will also say that I haven't done one previously in the past week or so, primarily because I've been trying to avoid spoilers about a couple of fairly major films that have been released recently, one of which was Matrix Resurrections, which came out at midnight today. And I got about 6 paragraphs into the review by The Guardian before they started to do some very heavy spoilers about the content of the film, and I had to shut the web page and disgust, tweet furiously at them about how you shouldn't be giving away plot points, but you should be letting the filmmaker's journey be enjoyed the way it was meant to be enjoyed by the viewers. And that is not by finding out about something pretty major happening in paragraph 6 of a review in a British newspaper. When this album was released, July 27th, 1984, the box office number one in America was Ghostbusters. The American number one single was When Doves Cry by Prince. The UK number one single was Two Tribes by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. So I'm afraid to say it's not quite as embarrassing as I feared it might be. I might have to say, well, actually the number one was like 99 Red Balloons or the Frog Chorus or something. Sorry, I do have When Doves Cry. I have 3 12-inches of Frankie Goes to Hollywood's Two Tribes in its various forms and remixes. And yes, I do have and enjoy the Ghostbusters film. In fact, I watched it yesterday, so I can't tell you how terrible it was in 1984 by using those examples from popular culture, because actually it's not strictly true. That said, there have always been terrible albums, terrible records, terrible films, terrible books, and in fact, given the sheer number and volume of Simply Red CDs that have turned up in some of my local charity shops, I'm beginning to think that a big Simply Red fan has died in my village. And Simply Red are, imagine if you're Mick Hucknall and you're seeing the Sex Pistols in Manchester in 1976, and you're there with Bernard Sumner and Peter Hook and Morrissey, and you're watching this amazing momentous show by the Sex Pistols in 1976, and you think, yeah, I'm going to use the spirit of that to write 432 songs about sex and keep singing them for the next 40 years. Sorry, Mick, I do not like your music, and I don't care what you think about that. My rating of your opinion is pretty low on the grounds that the music that you make is absolutely dog shit terrible. Not that you're watching this, and if you are, why the hell are you watching this? Go and do something else, please. That's a specific public information service message for any members of Simply Red that might be watching. Instead, I'm going to be talking about a good band that make good music, and that is Metallica. Now, you might think, oh, Metallica these days, stadium rock, boring. I understand that. However, that said, they're one of the few bands that have managed to stick to their guns in terms of their creative and artistic output over the years. Even if what they wanted to do has been absolutely awful, they followed that vision. And obviously doing the collaborative album with Lou Reed, Lulu, 10 years ago. Oh God, it doesn't get any better with age. That is still one of the very worst albums that has ever been released by anybody anywhere. However, even the worst part of Lulu is better than the entire of Simply Red's recorded career, even the remix by Underworld of Simply Red, which is the only Simply Red record I actually own because it's remixed by Underworld. Now, Ride the Lightning, 27th of July, 1984. In my mind, when I first got into Metallica in about 1987, 1988, due in no small form to the tape trading network at my school, me hanging around with kids with long hair and black t-shirts in the heavy metal mecca that was Birmingham, and knowing, where Black Sabbath and Napalm Death would rehearse, for example, and occasionally seeing members of Judas Priest and Led Zeppelin in the town centre. As far as I was concerned, yeah, nobody really understood 13-year-old me quite the way that Iron Maiden did. I have over time come to realise that the people's poets, Robert Smith, Bernard Sumner, and Morrissey for a period of time, I think had a better grasp upon what my life was like than necessarily all of the history lessons that were engaged in all of the Iron Maiden albums. There was, by the way, in about the year 1999, a fantastic webpage called Everything I Know About World History I Learned from Iron Maiden. And to be fair, I learned an awful lot about Alexander the Great, the Second World War, the Egyptians, and the Book of June, which was called, I think, To Tame a Land, because they couldn't get the rights to call the Song of June from Frank Herbert and his estate. So as far as I was concerned, at the time when I was 13 or 14, I, like a lot of people, was really struggling with my place in the world. So I didn't really know, well, who am I? Where am I? What am I going to be? What's my role in this world? How can I reconcile who I am and my hopes and my feelings and my emotions and my ambitions with the lot that life has given me? And when I was 13 or 14, effectively the career paths that were laid out to me in suburban Birmingham were, well, you can work in the chocolate factory, I can work in the car factory, I can work in the factory that makes HP sauce and has a chimney shaped like a sauce bottle, or I can go on the dole. And I didn't really want to do any one of those four things. None of them really appealed to me. And I was, we were poor. We didn't have money at all. I had, as long as I had enough money for a 10-pack of 90-minute tapes, then I had at least 15 hours of music a week that I could get in my way, and that still left another 153 hours in the week to somehow try and kill. And of course, the only records that you could hear were the ones that your friends owned, or the ones that were on the radio. And so between us, we probably all had a combined, a pretty good record collection. But each one of us individually instead had a fantastic selection of tapes that we'd all taped off our mates. And I was really insistent when people were doing home tapes is that you don't write on the cards, you write the songs on a bit of paper, and then I write them out in my own handwriting, because then they all look the same and they're all stacked. And you put, the albums alphabetically, so you don't put Judas Priest on the same tape as ZZ Top. Not that I had ZZ Top on anything, by the way. But, if you want to have Metallica, then what you need to do is you need to make sure that that's next to Ministry and Kylie Minogue. But don't tell anybody about the Kylie Minogue part of it. So ideally, you had the Megadeth and your Metallica and your Ministry all lined up together in your M's there. And home taping literally saved my life. Now, on some albums, they used to say that home taping was killing music. And maybe home taping was killing music, but trust me, home taping was making my life a heck of a lot more livable than if I'd only had to be able to survive on the albums that I could afford to buy with my pocket money. Now, this version of Ride the Lightning, by the way, I should point out, is the 2014 Blackened Records reissue, primarily because I never got around to buying a vinyl version in the 80s. I treated my records like dirt in the 80s. I really did. I treated them as if they were disposable objects, which of course, if you're a fan of pop culture, and the name pop is very much implied in there, is that they were entirely disposable. You listen to these disposable heroes, and then when they had outlived their lifespan, you took them in, you traded them, and you bought other records that you liked as you became older. That old cliche around when I was a child I played with childish things, but as an adult I put the childish things away. Metallica wasn't just for my childhood or my puberty, it was for life. And as you can probably tell by the t-shirt here, although it's not a t-shirt, is that I've been seeing them up until their most recent European tour in 2019. Thanks, Robin, for taking me. I had air guitar RSI after that show, by the way, at Twickenham, which was their last English show before COVID happened. So Ride the Lightning existed as a cassette tape, and if I remember correctly, this was slightly too long to sit on a 45-minute cassette, so I had to really hope that it would slide into the last extra couple of minutes on the reel, because the reels were never 45 minutes, they were always about 47 and a half, and that meant you could get a 48-minute album on there if you cut the silences right down, by the way. Which of course was one way of doing it. So released 27th of July 1984, Ride the Lightning, the Metallica second album. Some people said that this band was selling out when this album came out. Fight Fire with Fire, the opening track, I think that opens with an acoustic guitar. How dare they sell out Pop-Tarts, useless poodle rockers. Bullshit, guys. The thing about Metallica is Metallica never made any claims about wanting to be a cult, tiny niche band that would only play to a dog and trumpet in the Clarendon, in Hammersmith or wherever. Metallica wanted to be huge, and they were prepared to do the work, and they were prepared to turn a blind eye to tape trading in order to achieve it. They never made any claims about wanting to be a tiny band that nobody had ever heard of. They wanted to be enormous, and during the course of their careers, of course, they succeeded. They did, when they started off, had a rule which was not really very much in the way of hit singles, and certainly no videos. So the album Ride the Lightning has 2 singles which came from it, only one of which was commercially released. And the single from the album, by the way, and here is the original 12-inch from 1984 on Music for Nations, is Creeping Death. This is the first bona fide, absolutely drop dead, solid gold Metallica classic that is absolutely brilliant. I think it is about the biblical Passover, where I think, what is it? The spirit of something comes and takes the firstborn from all the people in a certain country. Hence, Creeping Death. Ultimately, it's a song that opens many live shows. The band played it live as recently as this week on their 40th anniversary shows at the San Francisco Chase Center. It's a classic, and it's a highlight of seeing the band live. Creeping Death, for some bizarre reason, is the penultimate track on the album. It should have been the opener. Metallica normally sequence their albums very well, but here, opening with a song that isn't Creeping Death on your album is obviously a catastrophically bad move indeed. And Creeping Death, by the way, does contain, it has a writing credit, I think, for Lars and for James, and I think also Hammett and Burton. So this is one of the few songs that's credited to all 4 people. Now, Kirk Hammett's contribution, by the way, is the bridge, the section where they go die, which is taken from an Exodus song that he wrote, and you can hear when Kirk left Exodus and went to join Metallica, you can kind of hear the Exodus in the early Metallica tracks. But also, of course, Cliff Burton, the band's legendary bassist, here pictured, of course, in double denim, because I think that's pretty much all Cliff ever wore. What I will say is Creeping Death barely got played on the radio. It's on quite a few copies, but Metallica were a band that were big but small at the same time, so they were hardly ever on radio. I don't think they did much in the way of radio sessions. They played live, they bootlegged live tapes, and tape trading kept the band going. Arguably, Metallica were the first band that sold more t-shirts than records until the Inspiral Carpets came along in 1990. However, that said, it wasn't because people didn't want to buy Metallica records, they just couldn't afford them. People that were Metallica fans in 1984 were generally broke, and I was one of them. When I started liking the band in 1988, I had very little money, and only really loud music seemed to understand that I felt thwarted by reality, and I was in an abusive relationship with reality in so much as it wasn't quite what I wanted it to be. Philip K. Dick has the quote, which is that reality is that which when you stop believing in it doesn't go away, and that's very much how I perceived reality at the time, and loud music made by angry young men was absolutely my saviour through there. Now the B-sides, by the way, of Creeping Death are Am I Evil, again played this week by the band at their 40th anniversary show, and Blitzkrieg, which were called The Garage Days Revisited, and if I recall correctly, Am I Evil was written by Diamond Head, I think, and Blitzkrieg Oh God, I don't know another band. I don't know their name. Sorry, I'm going to guess that they were one of the new wave of British heavy metal from the 80s that didn't sell vast amounts of songs or albums, but the ones that they did, um, you know, were very, very, very much loved. And there is, of course, when it comes to bands, there is a gap between the amount of records that a band sells and how loved a band is. And there are some bands that have sold, bugger all albums, but each one of those albums has got somebody that really, really loves the band. Whereas sometimes some bands, Simply Red, for example, people just go, well, I'll buy it 'cause I quite like it and it's on the shelf at the supermarket. And for me, at least, Metallica are for life, not just for Christmas and not just for puberty. I certainly wasn't going to sell their albums on as I got older. Right, so track one, Fight Fire with Fire, not a single, played live very frequently to this day. Bizarre song. I think it opens the album because it's got an acoustic guitar on it, and I think really that's the wrong place in the album to put Fight Fire with Fire. It should have opened side two, bearing in mind that, of course, splitting albums into sides is a very old-fashioned concept, and so therefore, instead of opening side two with Trapped Under Ice, maybe it should have opened with Fight Fire with Fire, and Creeping Death should have opened the album, and then Ride the Lightning. Track two is Ride the Lightning. Now, as you can probably tell by the cover, that Ride the Lightning deals with electrocution and the death penalty in America, death by electric chair, which is one of the lyrics that's in the song Ride the Lightning here. Death in the air, strapped to an electric chair. Ride the Lightning has a writing credit for Mustaine, so it was written while Dave Mustaine was a member of the band before he went and joined Megadeth. Sorry, I had a momentary brain freeze here. Over time, Metallica's songwriting credits have shrunk down largely to just Hetfield and Ulrich. This one, for example, I don't think there is a single song on the album that's written just by Hetfield and Ulrich. It's either got Cliff Burton or Dave Mustaine or Kirk Hammett or a combination of those involved in them. And I think, as I mentioned before, one of the big problems I had with the lyrics for this album are they are fairly adolescent. They are songs about things, not songs about life experiences. And for example, although of course James Hetfield will have no life experience of being electrocuted to death in an American prison for committing some form of terrible crime. It's about projecting him and his feelings and their feelings into others kind of situations. So they're all kind of obviously grimdark. In fact, if you wanted to think of a band that started off grimdark, once you get past Venom and Slayer and stuff, you get to Metallica. But also you've got just songs that I don't think are about anything very much in some cases. So it's difficult for me to latch onto these songs lyrically. As you've worked out from previous episodes, I'm a huge lyrics guy. I always love lyrics to songs. I think they're really important, that they're really good, and I can't help it. Sometimes bands do bad lyrics and put them to great songs. Guns N' Roses' Get in the Ring, for example, is not a great song, and then you get to the absolutely appalling lyrics. But also, songs on this album are utterly forgettable to me. Songs like Trapped Under Ice and Escape, songs that the band barely played live until this decade or the last 10 years of their career. I think they first played Trapped Under Ice, I think, in 2004, I think, maybe. And Escape, I think they played in 2004 as well, maybe. So it was only when Rob Tahisho had joined the band after 20 years that they started to bring out some really deep cuts that they perhaps should have played at the time. But some of these lyrics are not great. They are obviously, of course, considerably better than lyrics by Motley Crue and Rat and Stryper and Twisted Sister and Def Leppard, bands for whom lyrics are merely a combination of Scrabble letters thrown in some approximation of meaning and order. But they're still not great lyrics. So to me, even though I bloody love Metallica, I couldn't tell you what the lyrics to Creeping Death are without reading them on a screen. If I was in Metallica, they'd be one of the very few bands that I would need an auto cue for. They're both very wordy, and the words are not particularly great. So I can't follow the logic of them. I'd read them and I go, yep, sixth form poetry, clearly. Songs about the Bible, things in the Bible, about electrocution, death, and death actually, and more death as well. In fact, one of the songs is called Creeping Death, about death that creeps around, for example. They're not happy songs. So Fight Fire with Fire, that sounds like it's a song about fighting. Ride the Lightning, that sounds like a song about electrocution. For Whom the Bell Tolls, that's about death. Fade to Black, that's about death. Trapped Under Ice, I guess that's about being trapped under ice. Escape, that's probably about death and wanting to escape. Creeping Death, definitely about death. And The Call of Cthulhu is probably about a gigantic sea monster. So it's pretty fair to say these are all songs about death, 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 and dying. And there's a fantastic video on YouTube where some guy combines all the different versions of the word death that Metallica use in their entire of their catalogue, which therefore is enormous, as a huge medley, which I will link to. That said, musically, Ride the Lightning is a great track, much like For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black. What we're getting here actually is, aside from also including acoustic guitars, is Metallica at this point are one of the premier progressive thrash bands in the world. And I think this is perhaps why their music has endured more than most people might necessarily think. Because when you listen to some songs by some bands, especially of the same ilk, they're very one-dimensional. They start and they stop and they go at one speed, and there's no variation, there's no shift in tempos, there's no shift in parts as the song kind of progresses through. It's got a fairly standard verse, chorus, bridge, guitar solo, verse, chorus, widdly woo solo, climax, end kind of approach. Whereas these songs are made out of multiple different parts, different tempos, and it's almost like when Metallica writing a song on this album is actually they write 4 mini songs, each about a minute long, and then they arrange them in various portions so that it creates a song that actually feels like it's moving and changing constantly. Like a symphony with different parts and different movements as it comes along. The songs on this album are more complex than a lot of their peers, and this is, I think, one of the reasons why Metallica has endured as a band. That, and they bring it live. They are fantastic live, and they still are to this day. Maybe not quite as fantastic as they once were, but still bloody brilliant, although it has been 2 years since I've seen them. I've mentioned before, Creeping Death was the first single from the album. It got a CD release as an import here, which is a double pack single, which features Creeping Death, Am I Evil, Blitzkrieg, and also the A and B sides of Jump in the Fire, Seek and Destroy, live at the Automat, and Phantom Lord. And so you can choose which cover you want from the CD single here. This is a Vertigo Records CD from, I think, 1987 or thereabouts, after the band became a little bit more popular. But this was 1990, it says on the back here, after the release of the one single. £6.49 from HMV, well spent. I still have it to this day, of course. And I bypassed getting the vinyl, I bypassed getting the cassette. I went straight to getting the CD in the 90s of Ride the Lightning. This was one of the first CDs that was released. This is on Elektra in the US. It just features a scan of the LP booklets. So in the early and mid 80s, when people were putting albums onto CD, they weren't thinking about mastering, they weren't thinking about fidelity. They were like, right, we'll scan the cover, scan the back cover, scan the insert, there's your 4 parts, and then we'll just take a straight flat transfer of normally the cassette master of the album. But what this did say, of course, is on the back, that old warning, you haven't seen that for a while. The music on this compact disc was originally recorded on analog equipment. We've attempted to preserve as closely as possible the sound of the original recording. Because of the high resolution, the compact disc can reveal limitations of the source tape. So therefore, the original source tape isn't even as good as the compact disc version. So of course, when people are going, oh, you've got to get the original vinyl from 1984. I mean, yeah, you can, but it's going to cost you a fortune. It's not necessarily going to be any better. Aside from mastering decisions made around about the time of Death Magnetic, Metallica have been very sympathetic with their masterings, and their versions are generally pretty good. So Ride the Lightning there, as their second album. Obviously people were saying, sellouts, corporate whores, etc. How dare they do anything as vulgar as release an actual 12-inch single, whilst at the same point turning a blind eye to Iron Maiden doing monster-shaped picture discs of pretty much 4 or 5 songs off each one of the albums. I think I remember Seventh Son of a Seventh Son had 4 singles released from it. I think all of them were released in picture disc format. and some of them came in special poster bags and various versions like that as well. So Creeping Death, 27th of July 1984. It didn't blow my 11-year-old mind. I wasn't even aware that the band existed at that point. I was still but a child. I came into Metallica in 1987 and 1988 when, kids at my school dressed in black with long hair. I gravitated towards them, and then I realised that they were my friends and I liked the same music as them. So the album kind of just sat on the shelf for a long period of time until we got to 2016. 2016 saw the release of the Ride the Lightning Super Deluxe Edition box set, a limited edition of 30,000, which in itself doesn't sound that limited until you realise that Metallica sell twice as many tickets on an average summer tour stop as they do release box sets, or more correctly, released copies of this box set. Metallica got the rights back to their catalogue in the early 2010s, I think as part of their exit deal from their then label. They formed their own record label called Blackened Records, and they released the albums again on Blackened, which some of the copies, the ones in America, were pressed at the band's own vinyl pressing plant called the Metallica Press. And as you can see from the inner sleeve here, all expenses were spared in making sure that the band didn't look embarrassing. So if you want to get a feeling for kind of like, this is what my friends look like in about 1988, they had bumfless moustaches, they had lots of denim, they had lots of hair, they were wearing band t-shirts. Not much has changed over the years apart from the hair, really. But that was, this was a band that looked like my mate standing next to a wall, although obviously their lives have taken a very different path from mine. And overall, it's a really good Metallica album. I think like a lot of the Metallica albums in the 80s, the biggest criticism I can make of it really is the fact that the band were rushing against time and money to record albums quickly, with limited recording space and limited budgets. And I think this is one of the frustrations that the band had with Megaforce and Music for Nations, is that the budgets that those labels had were just not particularly big. And so therefore the band weren't able to really work their way perhaps as much as they wanted to. I haven't really talked about the box set released in 2016, so I'm going to do that now. It has I think 6 CDs and a DVD and an LP and various other bits. So let's go through the box set. I don't know how much this now costs to buy, probably more money than you're prepared to pay. However, you'll be pleased to hear all the audio content and the video content is streaming. So if you're one of these people that doesn't have to have the fantastic limited physical edition of the box, don't worry guys, it's all out there and you can experience it all. You just can't own it on little discs. So once you open the box set, let's go through the vinyl stuff that's in here. First and foremost, you have the Ride the Lightning vinyl LP, the 2014 Blackened Records remaster. This differs very, very slightly from the version that you can buy separately. The version you can buy separately has a barcode on the back. This version doesn't. There is a poster. I will open these posters shortly because they're very big indeed. There is a 12-inch picture disc of Creeping Death there, with a download code, and the B-sides Am I Evil and Blitzkrieg on there. There is a live LP recorded at the Hollywood Palladium, Los Angeles, March the 10th, 1985. Double LP presented in a semi-bootleg style here, with the whole set on. This version recorded to the sound desk, and it has 12 songs on it. But since the average Metallica song is longer than 3 Motley Crue songs, you're probably getting your value for money there. There is also a book. Here it is, the Ride the Lightning book, which, much like the Kill 'Em All book, contains photographs of various tape boxes, commentary, photographs from the time, pictures of various handouts, leaflets, photo sessions, support slots with Venom there, onstage photographs, interviews. Look at them, so young, so full of hair, so full of everything really, speed and fire and metal. I think they originally called themselves power metal before somebody came up with the idea of calling it thrash metal. I think, was it a thrash? The journalist that coined the phrase thrash metal, I think, died recently. Actually, I can't remember his name. Sorry, man. But here you go. So photographs from the time, and to me, you know, I dimly remember stuff like this happening. Photographs like this always appearing on the covers and inside the weekly issues of Kerrang magazine, and then once a year, all the howling mad thrash metal bastards would go to Dollington Park, which I think is there actually on this photo. And 30 or 40,000 people would drive all across the UK to spend a day watching bands that they otherwise would never get a chance to see because they would maybe play Newcastle once every few years. Here is, there's the promo single there, or a photograph of the promo single to Fade to Black, and below it the promo single there for Whom the Bell Tolls. Both of those are staggeringly expensive to find now. There's very few copies of them left, and of course everybody that wants one really wants one. Why they didn't put promo singles in the box set, I don't know. That's an RSD release for you guys. Stick out the promo 12 inches of For Whom the Bell Tolls and Fade to Black, and make people's lives a little bit easier. There's some photographs of what looks like diaries and calendars and things like that. More photographs of poor people playing on big stages, and then a list of the track listing that goes inside the deluxe edition of the LP. So we also have, hang on a moment, 3 posters. Let's see what these posters are. I undid these, I opened these out. Here's Camel presenting Metallica plus special guests Tank, whoever they are. That probably was pasted onto the wall next to your bus stop in your relevant town. Here's Venom and support from Metallica playing Zurich in 3rd of February 1984. Yeah, Road Dogs. Again, not a show I would have gone to. In fact, I've never been to Zurich. If any of you want to change that, please do so. And there's also Camel presenting Metallica and Tank in Zurich, a 3rd poster there. I don't know who puts those posters up actually. I've never had enough room, space or inclination to do so. Let's go a little bit further inside the box set here. Let's see what there is. Now, since the contents have managed to slip around inside the box, I will have to instead be a little bit cheeky and rearrange them as we go along. First thing here is a lyric book. So we have the lyric book with photographs of the printed, typed and handwritten lyrics to the album. Unsurprisingly, there's the chords to Fight Fire with Fire. There's Fight Fire with Fire, that's about fighting. Ride the Lightning, that's about death and execution. Fade to Black, that's about death. For Whom the Bell Tolls, that's about death. Trapped Under Ice, that's about being trapped under ice. Escape, pain, 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 pain. You know, pain is the 3rd word in the song Escape. Creeping Death, the opening song, the opening word is slaves. That's about death that creeps, unsurprisingly. Yeah, I don't quite know why I bothered with that actually. Anyway, don't tell anyone. So the CD version of Ride the Lightning inside the box set comes in a new card sleeve, getting rid of the old-fashioned jewel case that folds out into a gatefold. Not that there was ever a gatefold CD version of it. And it does tell you that the music on the compact disc, blah blah blah, limitations of the original source tape. There is also a DVD in there, which is the Live at the Metal Hammer Festival 1985. I think the first 4 circulating Metallica live show, and also 3 songs and an interview. 3 songs recorded at the Day of the Green in Oakland 1985, and some MTV and other television interviews. The deluxe edition also features Metallica interviews. I don't quite know why we have Metallica interviews on these actually. I've never understood the need to have these interviews here, because nobody ever listens to them. They're not music. I think they're really there just to pad it out a little, truth be told. The Metallica interviews there. I'll have to put that inside Then we have demos and rough mixes from Lars Volt of Ride the Lightning there. Now, what I will also say about these is that this has 10 studio demos, every track off the album, not necessarily in order, plus Blitzkrieg and Am I Evil. And when the box set was released in 2016, the band sent to the fan club a downloadable MP3 sampler which features an exclusive rough mix of one of the tracks, which is not actually on the box set, which is bizarre, but there you go. We also have, on the deluxe edition, we have some live CDs, so let's quickly go through these. We have Live at Donington, 1985, August 17th, probably a hot day. Live at the Kabuki Theatre in San Francisco, March 15th, 1985. This show was free on the band's website, Live Metallica, when the concert website where you could download MP3s of their live shows was launched in 2003. So that show isn't necessarily new to me. And then finally Live at the Lyceum Theatre in December 20th, 1984, which is only 11 songs, so it might be a support slot. Can't say for sure that it is, or if it isn't. And that is all the officially recorded material that's on the Lightning box set. So we've got, I think, 3-4 live shows, CD of demos, the album, CD of interviews, 1.5 live shows on the DVD, picture disc, and a remastered version of the LP. Metallica really know how to do a deluxe edition of a box set. They know how to do a fantastic, all-encompassing, everything a fan ever wanted version of an album. These are really the gold standard of super deluxe editions, because it really focuses on the music and providing the music, at least when they're officially released, at first point, as an affordable entry point. You can argue that the cost of these, which never really dipped below about £90, is affordable. Depends really. For 6 CDs and a DVD and 4 LPs and a book, it's quite affordable, although it is of course a fair chunk of change, and you have to consider whether that investment is worth your time and money. What I will say, of course, is all the content is available free to watch and listen on the internet, so that's probably the best place to end it. Ride the Lightning is probably my least favourite. That's not true, actually. Kill 'Em All is my least favourite Metallica album. I don't count Lulu as a Metallica album because it's got Lou Reed on it, by the way. Ride the Lightning is probably my second least favourite Metallica album, because I think the band got a lot better. That said, there is an enormous leap between Ride the Lightning and the next album, Master of Puppets, which will be in the next Metallica episode, which I talk about. Master of Puppets is an absolute classic, and possibly the best heavy metal album of all time, even better than Appetite for Destruction, and possibly even better than Moby's Animal Rights. Yet I said that. Yeah, you may not think it, but I really love that album. That one's perfect. What I find really surprising, actually, is how the band that made this scrappy little bunch of almost teenagers with no money and lots of enthusiasm, that were putting out an album a year and 2 days after their debut, and just kept going and going and going. How they became this enormous stadium rock band, on a par with Led Zeppelin or maybe a furious heavy metal Rolling Stones. I just couldn't have seen it predicted happening. When, I got into Metallica in 1988, I thought they'll get to arena size, they'll be big, but they'll never get bigger than that. No one can be bigger than that. And yet somehow they're now, comfortably even 30 years after I first started listening to them, 34 years in fact, still headlining stadiums all across the world, as much as they can. And obviously they played their 40th anniversary birthday shows this week, so happy birthday to Metallica. You don't look a day over 39. Next episode I will be talking about one of my very favourite albums, but you'll have to find out what that is when I get there. In the meantime, stay beautiful, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you. Bye.